What would it take for you to be willing to give up everything you know? To leave civilization behind, to burn your money and go build a cabin in the woods to start fresh? What would it take to start over and return to a state of nature? This is what we are going to be discussing as we dive into the American thinker Henry David Thoreau here on Circles Theory.
That's what it's gotta be this time. Yeah. Sun starts to set and the moon shall rise.
Henry David Thoreau was a 19th century American poet and philosopher. He studied under some of the greatest and went to some fabulous schools, but always seemed to really struggle when it came to life itself. He carried a few odd jobs here and there, but never really had some stuff stick. He's referred to at points as the most educated handyman in the entire town. And at some point, he gets very fed up with all of it. He has these moments where he starts to realize that everything that we look at as an idea of freedom has actually become chains that hold us back from being able to enjoy our lives. He engaged in a fabulous experiment in which he retreats to Walden Lake and really gives up everything to live alone in the woods, to come be a hermit, a Nick Offerman type, that is willing to go and try something different. And I find it interesting when he chose to do this. It was no accident that began his stay on the 4th of July, right? This was no way a coincidence. He was choosing to declare his own independence. And while his action withdrawing from the community with its own history and embracing values which he partially mistrusted, this was a reenactment. He is trying to go and show that those who suggest that civility is somehow a better way of living than returning to a state of nature are wrong. That we have become those who are owned by the fields that we sow, rather than being free humans able to engage and enjoy our lives. He understands that people came to the shores of New England and the coasts in general in search of this freedom and this so-called civilized life across the Atlantic, but they found instead that they had returned to a similar state and had not found the freedom that he believed they were really looking for. It's interesting. He recalls supposedly primitive tribes, right? He talks about them, at least in that sense, and refers to their rituals with actually nothing but approvement, right? He talks about these moments and rituals in which we burn all of our possessions and go out into the wilderness to find ourselves. And that in doing so, an individual might come to know who they really are. That through this challenge, which is something that's shown quite a bit in Campbell's work, which we've also discussed on this channel. But in general, this is a sacrament which he has come to understand in giving up civilization because it itself is flawed. And that to live in that is to break from one's true self and no longer be able to engage correctly. Like I said, when he refers to this ritual of burning one's possessions, he says, I have scarcely heard of a truer sacrament. This is something that's interesting if you've ever read the series The Witcher, which is a recurring theme of the individual wanting to stay in nature rather than being able to engage in supposedly civilized society. And so this is a struggle for him. He ultimately only stays for about 2 years before he returns, but the lessons he learned there are quite valuable. And that's really what Walden is. It's a combination of poetry and memoir that breaks down what it means to escape into that state and be able to return to who we are. And he had some fabulous discoveries, such as being able to understand that he only actually needed a couple of hours of work each day to feed and sustain himself. And he notes that really we've created a system in which debt is king and that we are all ruled by it. I think there's a quote in the book that really stood out to me when he says, I have no doubt that some of you who read this book are unable to pay for all the dinners which you have actually eaten, or for the coats and shoes which are fast wearing or already worn out. And you have come to this page to spend borrowed or stolen time, robbing your creditor of another hour. And so this is a powerful note. He is suggesting that we have reached a state where we are actually truly, really owned by the debts that we carry. And that any amount of free expression, enjoyment, or disengagement is a form of thievery. And we all have that. I sense that. I have a mortgage and bills and things and deals, and there's always this sense that I should be doing something to repay that if I take a moment for myself. And so in a sense, we have this idea that we are truly free, when in reality, we are constantly building a pile, digging a hole that is almost impossible to get out of. And in it, we try to find comforts, at least as Thoreau would suggest, right? We try to find comforts to make ourselves feel better. We might collect things or trinkets and build these nests and homes that we fill with stuff just so that they can be covered in dust that we have to clean. Ultimately, Thoreau suggests that we only get a real break from that when one is to die and be removed from it. He says, when a man dies, he kicks the dust. So please stick around and continue watching this series. Next week, we're going to discuss a meditation on literature and what Thoreau can tell us about literature itself. Catch you next time on Circle Theory. Thanks for watching this week's episode on Henry David Thoreau and his great work, Walden. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you learned today. We'd love to discuss it with you. And like always, see you next week as we continue our series. Catch you next time.